Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. What is it? It's Tuesday today. That's the bloom that I've just trimmed off, the Epidendrum nocturnum, and I can already see on the spike that I've just taken off a sign of growing out the side, so maybe there'll be another bud. I'm not doing a huge amount of watering today, so what I thought I'd do for the next video, no idea when you're going to get it, is just do like I used to do back in the summer, film little clips, and then when there isn't any more to film, just join them all together, so they'll just be a bit random. But first thing I wanted to catch was this. This is Brassavola nodosa. And now this plant should be nearly twice as big as this, but some half-wit actually dropped it on its face and broke off all the new growths. Duh. But it's pushed out more new growths. This is a strange one because, yes, it does quite well on its mount. I mean, it pushes out roots, it attaches. Would have looked a lot better without these two stumps where the growths got snapped off. Grr. But nonetheless, the biggest and bestest and fastest growing versions of Brassavola nodosa that I've seen have been in pots rather than mounted. I've seen some very good ones mounted, so this is not wrong. It is a way of growing it. But what I'm hoping to do at some point or another is actually get this in one of those holy clay pots, but not now, obviously. It's middle of flipping winter. But what we have got on the new growth is some spikes coming. There's a good one developing here. Where the hell are we? That's right, because of the dull light, I keep forgetting I can't get too close. There's another good spike coming off of that smaller new growth. And this is an older growth that decided to put out two leaves. Well, that's unusual. Very unusual. So this was a like slightly deformed growth. But I do believe that's going to push a spike out now. So I'll put up with two leaves on it. So there's at least two good spikes coming on. And this one looks like it's going to have a fair few blooms on it. This one probably not so many, it's not such a good growth, and what that's going to do I don't really know. But potentially a succession of blooms, because these spikes are all at different stages. This one's pushing on quite nicely, this one's not long started, and this one's only just started. So in theory, as this one finishes, this one should be just opening, so it could be open for a long time. It's a way off, but on its way. That's what I like to see. And in theory, I've never really seen this in. I haven't got hard evidence, but I've seen enough of it on other people's videos. Any of the Cattleya related type things that put a spike up in the late season on into the winter, it is said that they won't be as good. Now, I'm not so sure. I think the blooming at that time of year is not really affected, but what can be affected is new growths that put out at that time of year and try and mature with the really short days and the lower temperatures. I don't think they're as strong as new growths that put out, you know, late winter, beginning of spring. They push on in the growing season. They seem to be much stronger and more vigorous. And it's logical that those sort of growths would produce better blooms. Yeah, so I'm not so sure about all that. But anyway, we're going to have some Brassavola nodosa blooms. So we will have some night-scented stuff. And I will remember this time, although you can't actually smell it, because it is night-scented, it's a nighttime bloom. That's how it's designed to be. It might look quite nice to film that in the dark. My little light on, but it's a way off yet. But anyway, Brassavola nodosa has spikes. Now this one is Dendrobium Harveyanum, and this is one of the Dendrobiums that I don't rest. And I mean, it's obvious the reason I'm not resting at the moment is these strong new growths pushing up here that are still actually growing, so I'm certainly not going to stop watering and giving a bit of feed to this one. This has been a show-off all back through at least half of the last season just gone, and most of the season before. It was almost constantly in bloom, but it's had the wind knocked out of its sails. Due to it doing so well, there was an element of carelessness on my part. What I hadn't noticed was that it was in quite a lot of moss on a mount. and it was doing well, so I left it alone. What I hadn't realised was that moss had broken down and was turning acidic, and it started to take the root system out. And once I'd noticed it, it was already underway, so a lot of the existing roots, you know, just didn't make it. But anyway, it got taken off, cleaned up, remounted, fresh moss, and it hovered for a while doing nothing, dropped a few leaves and stopped blooming. But it has picked up now, and it's got 3 new growths. Those will be ready to bloom next year, but it's still going to bloom on older canes. And I've just noticed today it may be going to bloom. We do have signs of things coming out of canes. Now the trouble is, at this stage of its life, there's a nice one there, these could end up being kikis. They may be bloom spikes. I'm making no judgment at the moment, but it is starting to move again. I don't think we'll see any blooms on the new growths till next season, and then hopefully we'll see lots. And the new growths to go with next season as well. Yeah? So I think this will pull on nicely next year, and in the meantime it may or may not be attempting to bloom. As I said, they may be kikis. There's a big kiki on here at the moment, this one. It's probably got enough roots to take it off now. But it's staying where it is for now, because I don't want to disturb it, you know, with the really low temperatures and short days, because it'll just stop. You know, it'll just sulk. So there's no point. I'd rather wait until the better growing conditions are there, and then the roots will establish and hopefully new growths come out, and then somebody else can have a Dendrobium Harveyanum. But that's a way off yet. That'll be into next year sometime. But, you know, I don't mind Dendrobiums producing a kiki now and again. It does mean that there's new plants starting for somebody else. You know, I mean, this one has had a lot of admirers in the past because of the blooms. They are attractive. The fact that I haven't got any, I'll probably put a pop-up up. But they are lovely yellow, very frilly, smashing. And on this plant, they've been almost constant until the setback. Hopefully we'll get that going again next year. I love this plant. But the plant itself is dropping some leaves. The canes do eventually become deciduous, so that's not a big deal. Yeah, but because I didn't get many new growths last year, because it was slowing down, because it wasn't happy, and I've only got 3, I'm going to end up with more leafless canes than those with leaves on. And for me, when a cane starts looking like that, it needs coming off the plant. It's had its day. It's totally desiccated, it's brittle, you know. So there's another one here, you know, that's had its day. This one's had its day. So next spring, when I start seeing it start to move again, the older canes like that can be cut off near the base to leave some space for the new growths to come on. Any that have still got leaves or signs of spikes coming out can just stay. But when they get, you know, really gone like this, and they've had their blooms, they've done their thing. With a plant that size, if you look at the total number of canes, taking 3 or 4 canes off that plant that are totally desiccated and of no further use is not going to harm the overall strength of the plant whatsoever. If it had 3 canes and I took 2 off, that probably wouldn't do it a lot of good. So when you start thinking about taking the old canes off of Dendrobiums, make sure they've totally had it first. Because if they haven't, like this one here, still got a few leaves, still hydrated, it's still a useful cane. But as I said, there are a few on here that will come off when I do my tidy up. But anyway, Harveyanum is, it's not sulking. It's had a sulk, and it's sort of coming back, but it's not going to do a huge amount really until the new year now, until the longer days. We're only a couple of days off the winter solstice now, so we will start very, very slowly getting the days back longer and longer, a bit more strength in the sun and all that sort of stuff. But quite honestly, it's end of February before anything noticeable happens, and at that point the resting Dendrobiums should be doing stuff. Now let me rephrase that. The resting Dendrobiums better be doing some stuff, because this is the best rest they can ever have with me. If it doesn't produce the blooms, then those particular individuals that just still won't bloom probably are better off with somebody else. They've got the best light they've ever had, the coolest temperatures, and they started their rest at the right time of year this year. I gradually progressed into the full rest at the right time. Last year they didn't start their rest till the middle of January. Well, some of them should have been thinking about coming out of it then, not going into it. So yeah, bit different each year, those resting types. When I get it right, it'll be consistent year in, year out, and it'll work once I get it right. But for some, I still haven't quite got that right. Hopefully this year is the one, and we should have lots of resting type Dendrobium late winter, early spring blooms. But this isn't one of those. This one's still getting watered and fed. It's got actively growing canes, pushing out new root systems. I don't want to stall it, so we'll keep that one going. Now this Latoria is just about losing its very last bloom now. That's the Roy Tokunaga White Knight, so I've now got to wait for new spikes to develop, but bearing in mind that's been in bloom for 4 months, you know, you can't really moan, can you? But it'll be a shame for it to be out of bloom again. This one's still doing well, Rhodostictum, and the blooms last ages on that too, so I've still got, you know, a few Latoria blooms lurking. Few, not many. I was just trying to pick out that little Pinguicula. It's got another bud coming down the base there, so that looks like the one that's going to produce the most flowers out of my new ones. But all the Pinguiculas seem to be doing fine. The one that I've had the longest is splitting at the moment. It's pushing up new plants, so it's going to be a fair old potful next year. And the other two that are single plants at the moment, they're growing, they're pushing out new leaves and everything, so they're obviously happy in the winter in here. Now that's the bit I didn't know. It's the first winter really. But they're all Mexican type Pinguiculas, and they don't like to get cold basically. It doesn't get that cold in Mexico where they come from. They don't all come from Mexico, they're just classed as Mexican type Pinguiculas. So, but yeah, they all seem to be growing nicely. That one's got a split crown, so that will be 2 plants. This one's not doing much, that one, but it is sort of growing. Those clonking sounds are annoying magpies up in the gutter chucking out the moss, looking for grubs and stuff, which is why I don't use my rainwater. Gutters are filthy and full of things. And at the moment, I think they're full of magpies. Yeah, it's a good job I'm not at the other house. They might be ex-magpies. Anyway, Pinguicula's doing okay. Somebody asked about how much I think it costs to heat my green. Well, the expression was, how much does it cost to heat your greenhouse? Well, firstly, it's not a greenhouse, so it doesn't cost me anywhere near as much as it would if it was separate from the house as a standalone building, a true greenhouse, which it isn't. It's joined onto the house, so it gets borrowed heat from the house, which reduces the costs out here. But in addition to that, the heater is only there to stop the minimum temperature dropping. So I'm not heating it, if you see what I mean. I'm stopping it getting too cold. There is a difference. You know, if I wanted to maintain 21 degrees in here permanently, the heater would be on all the time. But as it is, it's mainly on at night, comes on for, it's on for about a minute and 10 seconds, and then depending on how cold it is outside, it takes about 10-15 minutes for it to drop down again and the thermostat kicks it back in. So it's not on that much, and I reckon it's a maximum of about £7 or £8 a week in electricity. Now this is my hobby. So £30 a month for 3 months, you know, some people spend more than 30 quid on a meal out, and that's gone overnight. So I'm happy with the costs of stopping this getting too cold out here, which is the only, you know, the running costs of the fans and things like that I've never tried to work out. But the heater itself is an exception because it's only there in the winter. It doesn't cost a lot to keep a minimum temperature. I mean, this place isn't even insulated. You know, I've seen people with bubble wrap on the inside, bubble wrap on the outside, and boy is that a hassle with a place like this. Can you imagine trying to bubble wrap all this glass? Everything would have to come out so it doesn't get done. I did it once, and when I took it all down, everything had to come out again. I'm not doing it. Twice a year doing that is just a pain in the proverbial. And I don't think it saved me that much money, really. And it shut the light out, you know, so I'm not so keen on that. But I did bubble wrap the roof at that time, and I decided to leave it there, because that's where most of the heat gets out, straight up through the roof. So that stays on there, and it gives me that extra bit of protection for the plants in the, you know, when the sun is almost directly above, beating down on here for sort of 7 or 8 hours. That helps. Yeah, it helps keep the heat out, quite honestly. Trouble is, once the heat does get in, it's trapped in here. But that's how I work anyway. So that's the heater question answered. When I went through my sort of general care stuff, and I went through it sort of genus by genus, somebody seemed a little bit outraged that I forgot my Zygopetalums. Bearing in mind I've had so much trouble with that particular genus that they thought it was quite amazing that I just completely forgot them. Well, I did. I just completely forgot them. Well, I've only got 3. It's not like I've got a huge collection or anything. But the 2 down here, this is the Louisendorf. That's that latest growth. That's a beauty. And there's something growing out the side of that, which could be a spike. There's another big one round the back there, and it's got that funny little thing sat there that looked like a spike, and then it's done nothing for quite a long time, so maybe it never will. But it's doing okay. It's got 1 leaf yellowing at the moment on the oldest pseudo bulb, so I'm not panicking. Well, not yet anyway. Now that's Louisendorf, and over here is I keep forgetting this one, because this one has not got very good roots, so it doesn't get watered very often because it doesn't dry out. This is Arta Ellie. Stonehurst, a named variety, and that is actually the parent, one of the parents of Louisendorf. So they're related, so I keep them together. Not intentionally, that just happens to be a suitable space for them where the shelf is tall enough to accommodate the leaves without bashing them around, and they never get dripped on. I take extreme care not to get these leaves wet, and so far I have quite clean leaves on these, so I'm not messing that up. But the other one, this is a no ID one, my latest edition, and I got it because it was a mass of flowers in bloom when I got it, and that's the only reason, plus it didn't cost a lot. But it's one spike's already been removed. This is the last bloom on that spike. I'm just going to take that spike off. That will leave 1 spike with 3 blooms. Now, bearing in mind that's not a strong growth, that had 3 spikes coming out of it, and that must have put quite a strain on that plant. So I'm dying to get these spikes off, and then the plant will trigger that it's lost its blooms, and hopefully it'll think about pushing up another new growth, and maybe this one will mature after the spikes have gone, because I mean that's what the bulb should look like, and that's what this growth looks like. But zygos often push their spikes out as the new growths are progressing. Quite a few of them have actually they're in full flower before the bulbs are anywhere near mature, so that's not unusual. But I need to get this spike off now, leaving just the 1. And it was the weakest spike, the last one. It's the thinnest one with the least number of blooms. And hopefully the plant may start thinking about pushing out a new growth, but maybe not this time of year, I don't know. It's, you know, as fast as it blinks its eyes and says, oh, it's daytime, it's not. It's night time again. So they don't move much this time of year. But not dead yet, and that's 3 now. Coming on. Never make assumptions when orchids are concerned. Everything I just said about this plant, I just cut this spike off. Look. So it's doing what I was hoping it was going to do. I just hadn't noticed it. There's a new growth just splitting out of that sheath there. So it is starting to move. Now this one hasn't been repotted because I was quite happy with the media it's in. So I don't know what's in the pot, but I can see the base of good roots around the plant, so I'm not in any rush to get that out of the pot at the moment, and it probably would be a silly time of year to do it. I think I'll probably wait until that new growth shows signs of roots, yeah, and then at least I know I've got some good roots on the plant and a new set starting to grow. That's about its best chance, because I'm adamant that some of my others were lost by just repotting them at the wrong time, you know. And they, you know, they're in growth, but they haven't got the root support they need to keep that going. And then you go and disturb the roots; it doesn't do them a lot of good. Getting that timing right can make or break a repotting, such that the plant hardly notices it's happened, or it spends the next 6 to 9 months sulking because it wasn't right. So, you know, try and think about your roots. Oh, and having got that zygo out of the way, you can actually see my Cymbidium now. Now this is its bad side, because the 2 bulbs we're looking at are the oldest bulbs. Those are the 2 that were there when I repotted it. The new growth is the one facing away from us, you know, the big fat one with the nice green leaves. But now the zygo's out of the way, we can actually see how the spikes are progressing. It is my only Cymbidium, and several people who seem to know a bit about Cymbidiums were worried because of the change of the environment. It came from outside while the spikes were showing. They hadn't moved much, they were only about 1.5 inches long at that point, and it went up into the cool bedroom on the windowsill, which would have got a lot more sun than it would have got where it was outside. So it's quite a change of environment, and sometimes spikes play games, you start messing about. But somebody was interested, are your buds okay now you've brought it down into the grow room, or have they blasted? Well, have they hell. They're growing on nicely. Spikes are still extending, and I was going to stake that, but I'm not. Looking at the way those spikes are and how sturdy they are, they're going to support themselves. So I think they are going to be naturally quite upright. So, and quite honestly, I've left it too late now. If I stake that upright, I will alter the aspect of those blooms, so we'll get some sideways and maybe even some upside down. So I'm hoping that all the blooms will have a nice aspect on them once they open and we actually see what colour it is. But they're not going to be pale wishy-washy colours, not with buds that colour. They're either going to be a deep pink heading towards purple. They may even have some red in them, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, because I've never seen them. So that'll be good. Coming soon, as they say. I'm not sure how well this is actually going to show up, but that tatty looking object right up against the glass with a lot of bare deciduous canes on it, if you look at the canes with the leaves on, they're actually a mass of buds. Even the little one at the back with the yellowing on the leaves, that's got at least 3 buds pushing out. The larger cane coming out there has got buds along the whole length. And the other cane down there, that's got buds. That's got a lot of buds. Now that's a no ID, and it will always be so. But you can always look this one up. But although it's probably quite a complex hybrid, it has quite a lot of Unicum in it. So it is a lovely orange with a strange shape to it. Not huge blooms, but it looks like there's going to be quite a few of them. I haven't got a clue how long they're going to take to develop, but they're on their way. There is no way on a plant like that that those are all kikis. There might be the odd one decides to be a kiki, but those are buds. There's just too many all at once for that to be kikis. So we will get some Unicum look-alike blooms down the line. And you know me, I'm a sucker for the yellows and the oranges, so I'm looking forward to that. But boy, is that a tatty looking plant. But, you know, when things are in bloom, the tatty plant bit seems to fade and you sort of forget about it for a bit. So we'll have to wait and see with that one. Somebody asked if my Coelogyne cristata has actually bloomed. Well, no. It's a simple answer. But I'm still holding my hopes up. That is a spike. There's no doubt about it. But whether it's going to push on and actually develop, because I've never had one bloom for me, I don't really know how fast that should be progressing. I mean, for a while I wasn't even sure it was a spike, because it was so near the pseudobulb, little pointy bit of green, it's difficult to tell, because that's where the new pseudobulbs come from as well. So the base of the pseudobulbs extend and produce a new bulb. That's its growth pattern. But it is a spike. It's very slow progress, and I have no idea if that's right or not, or whether it's going to blast and just stall. I haven't got a clue what it's going to do, but I'm watching it very carefully, because that will be the first cristata bloom if it does. We'll wait and see. It's the only spike. There's no sign of any others anywhere, and those are in profusion at our spring show. In fact, both societies' spring shows. So normal blooming for this is like February, March time, judging by the way others in the Orchid societies bring their specimen plants in. So maybe it takes that long for the spikes to actually develop, and it will bloom in February. Patience. I'll have to order some in, I think. Now this little tiny Twinkle is now going to be nicknamed the Christmas Sweets Orchid, because I don't tend to eat sweet things much at all, so there's very rarely any cakes or biscuits or chocolate or anything like that in the house, except when it starts getting towards Christmas and I've got family coming round that will pick those sort of things, and over that period I'll join in. But to me, the smell of that is as though I've just opened a box of fudge. That vanilla fudge scent. So, and that would be the only time that sort of thing would be in my house. So it's forever going to remind me of Christmas now, the scent off of that. It's subtly different to the Twinkle cinnamon that I've got, and it is a more vanilla-y fudge type. That'll test your memory. Did I just say a band name then? But it definitely smells like vanilla fudge. And if you've ever heard of that band, then you are into obscure music. There we go. A beauty. All three spikes opened at once, so I don't think that will be it. And as soon as those spikes are off, I'll be looking for new growths ready for the next lot. In about a year's time, I expect. But nonetheless, as a recovered plant, you know, it's first blooming since it went downhill and started to come back again, I'm more than happy with 3 spikes of these pretty little highly fragrant blooms. So about 2/3 the size of normal Twinkles as far as the blooms are concerned, and the plant itself is half the size of a normal Twinkle. A real nice miniature Oncidium type. If you're short on space, you've got room for one of them, definitely. Tiny Twinkle. Okay, I'll excuse me, finish up with this Cattleya cernua, because these blooms are relatively short-lived. I mean, one spike's already gone, this one's just going. You know, you've only got about 14-15 days out of these blooms. It was quite a shame actually, because as we went to go to our Christmas function back on Saturday, I said to Hannah, what do you think about this? And she said, oh, you ought to take that, that's looking really good. But unfortunately, the Wednesday before that Saturday, one spike had gone over and I had 2 blooms on that Saturday starting to look like this. So that's really what I would have taken it like, and that's really not a patch on what it was like, you know, sort of this time last week. So because of the packing up and car and all that sort of stuff, plus I was getting a lift, I didn't bother. I believe now that this plant's got its strength and it's capable of pushing out multiple growths at the same time, it's going to do that again. Yeah, so I didn't take it. Anyway, that'll do for today. That's lots of random clips. Until I put them together, I don't know how long it will be, so some of them may get carried forward into another video. I'll see how I go. And see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.